Welcome back to another episode of Allen Police Behind the Badge. We're your hosts, Officer Sam Ripamani and Alexis Birmingham.
And today, our guest is Assistant Chief Taliaferro.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you for joining
absolutely.
us.
Thanks for coming on.
You're a hard guy to get a hold of sometimes. You're so busy.
Yeah, definitely the schedule stays pretty full, but I appreciate your patience, and I think with the way the direction our department's going and the energy we have, it's a good thing that we're busy.
Yeah, of course.
Absolutely. So Chief Taliaferro has been giving us a little grief here lately about why he hasn't been on the podcast yet.
Yeah, my feelings have been hurt,
And he's like, so-and-so is going for me, but the deal was we wanted to get good at this or better.
We wanted to work out the kinks so that we had the best podcast.
Yeah, well, thank you.
So how long have you been with Allen?
So I've been with Allen for 21 years. So last July was 21 years for me. I was blessed. They hired me out of college. I had graduated and I was working as a rehab tech at an inpatient rehab hospital, and it wasn't what I wanted to do, and I wasn't really making a living for my family. And my father-in-law was a state trooper. Funny story is my father-in-law knows your father-in-law, Buddy Powell. They worked together for many years there in Collin County.
Side note, your father-in-law wrote me a ticket one time.
Yeah, from what I've heard, he wrote lots of people tickets. Day. Yeah. So after, seeing him, that state trooper car parked out in front of the house and seeing him in uniform, I was like, this is something I think I want to do. And I applied with Allen, DPS in Garland, and Allen just processed me the quickest, and it was a blessing. So this was the place I was supposed to be.
That's awesome. Yeah, so that's just kind of the same for me. Is I was in construction, and my father-in-law, being the trooper and seeing that car, and that kind of drew my interest towards law enforcement as well. And in 2007, when the market kind of crashed and people weren't buying houses anymore, I was like, I got to find I had one kid, and
when I was in college, I was trying to, my goal was to be a high school football coach and teacher. And I always felt the desire to want to help people. And, at first I thought my calling was to help, young teenagers and kids in school, help, develop them to be good people. And then things change, and directions change. And, like I said, I think God had a plan for me, and it's worked out like it's supposed to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Have you had any interesting experiences or stories that you can share with us?
Yeah, I mean, I've been blessed. I've had 21 years worth of stories. I've seen people at their best and at their worst. I think some of the hardest things that we as police officers ever have to do, for me personally, was unfortunately having to make death notifications. I've had to tell way too many people that a child or a loved one passed away in a car crash or some unfortunate incident, and to be there for that, it's very difficult, but it's something that we have to be there. We have to be strong. So it's one of those traumatic incidences that we experience in our profession. But I've also seen the good. I was an SRO for 2 years. I got to interact with a lot of children. I remember Red Ribbon Week, sponsored by the DEA. It's a drug awareness week. Going to the elementary schools and planning events and programs, and just seeing those kids so excited to see us and truly be fans of us. That was one of the some of the best and most uplifting things that I've done in my career.
So you've gone to the FBI also, right, for some training?
I did last year, January of 2024. I went to the FBI National Academy, which is a 10-week law enforcement training session at Quantico, Virginia. So you go to the FBI Training Center. You live in a dorm. My roommate was from the Big Island, who's from Hawaii.
Wow.
Actually, he's a cattle rancher on the island, which was kind of cool.
Well, that's interesting.
So, 10 weeks with a stranger, it's like a college dorm. It's a, 15 by 20 room, had to share a bathroom with 3 other people. But it was one of those life-changing experiences. I've met some amazing friends that I still keep in contact with. There were 200 people in our session. So, I have 200 colleagues that if I ever have a question to bounce ideas off or need some guidance, I've got this huge network of people that we went through a lot of challenging aspects with that I've bonded with, and a big part of the FBI Academy is physical fitness. So the culmination, every week you do a fitness challenge, and at the end of the program, you do the 6.5 mile run. So you do the obstacle course on Marine Base Quantico, which is about 2.5 miles through the woods, and then we ran up this hill that seemed like it was forever. And then, about 3 miles on the road to get back to the FBI headquarters. So just another reason, you embrace those difficult situations and you build bonds. And, it was March when we were doing that, and it was about, I don't know, 38 degrees and windy. So
goodness,
it wasn't
so
the best
cold.
conditions, but,
It's not Texas weather.
It's not at all. One of our first, weekly challenges, there were about 4 inches of snow. So I've never really run in the snow. And I'm glad I don't have to do it again. So I like our summers,
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
You had to get acclimated.
you do. But, while I was up there, you get an opportunity to, on weekends to go experience the history of our country. Being in Virginia, there's so much. I mean, that's where our country started, up there in the Northeast. So going to see historical sites, being close to Washington, D.C., you get to see a lot and just learn more about yourself. And I think one of the most beneficial parts of that program was the opportunity to self-reflect. I really got to look back at myself and see, what I did good in my career and some things that I really failed. We had to take this. I took this leadership class, and one of the assignments was we had a crucible assignment, and this crucible assignment was to reflect back on one of the worst situations in your life and see how you handled it. And that just, it really helped me grow as an individual. Really made me value my family. I think in law enforcement, our families are so underrated. Our spouses, our children, they go through so much and provide so much support for us to do this job. Without them, we couldn't do it. And my wife, Kendra, has been, my rock for, we've been married 23 years. And without her, I wouldn't be here today.
Well, and it's a sacrifice, too, for you to go 10 weeks and be that far away from home.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
That was the hardest part. I'm really close with my family. I've been married for 23 years. I've got 2 kids in college. My son Jackson and my daughter Mabry are 20 and 19. And away from work, that's all I wanted to do was be part of my family. That family time was so valuable for me. It gave me an opportunity to kind of disconnect, recharge my batteries, and then reflecting on those things. One of the hardest parts of our jobs is that we can disconnect. And I looked back, and there were a lot of times that I disconnected, and it wasn't fair to my family. But they stuck with me, they supported me, and without them, I couldn't be where I was.
You mentioned your kids. So are they both in college now?
They do. So both of them are in college. So my son, he plays college football at Benedictine College, which is a small Catholic school in Atchison, Kansas.
Nice.
And they came down to Texas to recruit him. And our faith is very strong, very powerful to us. We're a Catholic family, so we went up there and visited the campus, and it felt like it was the perfect fit. And it's kind of funny. My daughter, when she was a junior, talking about college, she was telling us, "I want to go to the biggest school as far away from mom and dad as I can go." She's like, "I want to go to Tennessee, Auburn." This, she's naming these huge camp schools, and she didn't even tell us, but she applied to Benedictine and applied for a presidential scholarship. And she got accepted. She didn't get the presidential scholarship, which is a full ride, but she got a partial. Half her tuition is covered by her academics. So,
oh wow, that's nice.
Unbeknownst to us, she was like, "I'm going to follow my brother." So they're both up there, which as a dad is amazing because I know my daughter's safe. Because if she ever needs anything, my son, he's about 6'3", probably now he's close to 300 pounds. He plays center.
That big?
He has. But him and 6 of his closest buddies will be there for my daughter whenever she needs them. So.
That's a good feeling.
It is. It's relief. I've got some relief.
That's awesome.
So funny story about his son. I run our tobacco grant for the city. So his son, I think he needed some service hours or something. So
he was a senior.
He was a senior in high school, and he came in to do tobacco stings with me. And every store we went to we've since done education with these stores, but they kept selling to this kid because he looked like he was 30 years old. This big old boy walks in, and I was like, okay, we're done for the day.
He made your job pretty hard that night.
Jackson was telling me because Officer Graves would go in with him kind of as an undercover, and he's at the register about to buy from one of the gas stations, and Officer Graves goes, "Hey, you don't want to sell him that," and shows him his badge. He goes, he's not 21.
Yeah, we started.
Jackson, he loved that. He thought that was the coolest thing ever.
But it was good for us too because we started doing education with all of our stores, and since then we still do these things, and we rarely get sales now, so that's good. So the training's paying off, but kind of opened our eyes to it, and like, oh my goodness, like this kid's going in, but to the clerks, he looked like he was 30 years old.
Yeah.
So, but I was like, oh my goodness, we were going to do like 15 or 20 stops that night. And I think we got through like first 7 or 8 or maybe 10. And I was like, okay, we're done. I'm shutting it down. I was like, I can't write any more tickets tonight.
Yeah, he needed those hours for his National Honor Society. And, like any high school kid, it's like, oh, these are due in a couple weeks. So he was procrastinating. So I called Sammy, and Sammy did me a favor.
No,
they had a sting coming up.
Yeah,
so
I never used him again, though. Your kid is awesome.
Yeah.
Super. I mean, polite, respectful, all the boxes checked, but yeah, I'm not using him for tobacco stings anymore.
Yeah. The last time I saw Mabry, she came and adopted a dog.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, that's a fun story.
The shelter, they started that program where I guess they call it doggy field trips, right? Where another department will bring a dog into their into the building in their department to show off what some of the animals we have available for adoption. And Officer Strickland, who was on the podcast before me. No, just kidding.
She was before you.
She had at the time her name was Megan Barkle.
Yep.
Brought her in, and I snapped a picture and sent it to Mabry, my daughter, and Kendra, and I got a text and it's like, oh, you have to get it. And I was like, it's a cute dog. And then Mabry, this was about a week before she went back to college. So she calls me and says, Dad, is the dog still at the police station? And I was like, yes. She goes, well, her and her friend, we're coming up there. So I called Officer Strickland. It's like, hey, you still at the PD at the police station? And she said, yes. Well, my daughter's coming. So Mabry comes and then she sees the dog and she's like, you have to get it. You have to. Mom wants this dog. So I called down to the animal shelter and asked Tammy. It's like, okay, we're going to adopt it. And she said, okay. And so Mabry took her home, and we surprised my wife Kendra that night with a new dog. And so
and her name has changed now.
Yeah,
right?
we changed her name. My wife is a fanatic. I mean, one of our rituals, and this is probably one of those funny facts, is like we love watching Golden Girls. It's kind of our we de-stress, at night. It's like
turn it on. It's like background noise.
Sophia is the original savage, But so we're huge Golden Girl fans, so we named her Betty White because Betty White was an adamant animal lover, and she's like, this is the perfect name. So
oh my goodness, so fun story about Betty White. We were in our office, and Alexis goes, oh my goodness, look at this dog at the shelter. Well, a sheepadoodle is I've always wanted one. That's been like my dog, and I was like, oh my goodness. So I sent it to my wife. She's like, yeah, no. You bring that dog home? Come pack a bag too, because we have 3 dogs already. Yeah. So that next day, we're like, if it's still there, we're going to bring it to the station. So we did, and we had Lainey. Lainey was actually kind of shadowing us for that week, and so we had staff meeting, and Lainey brought it to staff, and
And during our meeting, Lainey, she took it around to like dispatch and all around our department, and
there were 3 or 4 people who, if I hadn't called as soon as I did, were going to adopt her. I mean, Deanne, the chief's admin, she was like, if you didn't do it, I was gonna, she was going home at lunch and really thinking about it.
Yeah,
she's the sweetest.
So
no one wanted to let her go back to that shelter.
No, not at all.
They loved her.
And then we've had dogs our entire life. So we have a golden doodle. His name's Sully. My mother-in-law, it was her dog at first, and then she her job kind of changed and had to travel a lot. So my wife and daughter finagled us purchasing Sully and adopting him. And so, but he's a golden doodle, and we found out a couple years after we got him, or about a year after we got him, that he was deaf.
Yeah.
And but my daughter, she's kind of the dog whisperer. So Sully knows sign language, so he knows sit and down and knows walk, and he's loving life. So he's just
awesome.
a big goofy guy.
How did him and Betty White get along?
Oh, actually really good. So it was kind of funny at first. He was kind of apprehensive and real careful, but now, they'll play, and I'll look over and he's got her neck in his mouth, and they're fine. Yeah. So
best buds.
They are their best buds. So it's good.
That's a lot of fun. So do you get to go to make it to any of the football games for your son?
Yeah. So actually 2 weekends ago, we went up for family weekend. So he's not playing a lot just yet. He's getting some mop-up time. He's really part of a Benedictine right now. They're ranked 3rd in the nation. They're one of the powerhouses in NAIA football. Last year they made it to the national semifinals. So
that's really cool.
Yeah, no, it's a strong program. But we got to go up a couple weeks ago for family weekend. Got to see him. Got to see Mabry. But hopefully when he starts playing, we'll figure out some travel arrangements and get up there as much as we can. But he played high school football down here in Texas, and some of the best memories I have, funny, you're talking about work memories, but personal memories. Whatever my kids were doing, if they played in the band, my daughter played volleyball, Jackson played football and baseball, it didn't matter what they were doing, but seeing them on stage and performing or out on the field and performing, those are the best memories that I have. And, I was so blessed that my schedule worked out that I didn't have to miss many of their activities. Because those, like I said, those are the memories you cherish. And, his senior year, it was kind of bittersweet because it's his senior year, and you experience this with your son. It's exciting, but then it's one less. It's one less. Got through that, and then now the potential for him to play in college gives us we're excited to go see him play one more time. So it'll be good.
That's fun. Yeah, it was tough with going through that senior year, but then I was reminded the next year my youngest started 7th grade.
Exactly.
So I didn't even get a year off.
Go. That's right.
The early morning workouts never ended. So back to football that following year. And it's my son's a lineman. My youngest is a lineman like your boy. And it's totally different. Watching a kid that's on the line versus a skill position. My oldest is a receiver. He, we're up in gunner where you don't throw the ball every play. So you never knew. He wasn't involved in every play. But now that my son's a left tackle, he's every play he's involved in it somehow.
Jackson plays center, so like every play on offense, I was stressed because it's like his hand's on the ball, and if it's a bad snap, the whole play's ruined. So it's like I feel for those parents that their kids are pitchers, and and there's a lot of pressure. So, those were great times, and we sat through. Pouring rain, freezing cold temperatures, driving out to Longview. We had a weird district. I mean, we would drive out to Longview, Tyler. One of our playoff games was in Port Arthur. I mean, that was an 8-hour drive. Wow. So we were all over the state.
Did y'all play College Station?
We did. His junior year, we played College Station as a playoff.
I remember that. We used to have these talks on Monday morning. So
it's like, where'd you go this weekend?
Yeah. How our teams are doing.
Yes.
There's a lot of good memories there.
Yeah. So shifting gears a little, can you tell me like a little bit about the process or how you were told that you were going to become the new assistant chief?
Yeah, actually. So when I went to the FBI Academy in January, we were transitioning. Chief Harvey was retiring and Chief Dye was coming in. So I had met Chief Dye one time before I left. We met for lunch, all of the command staff before, I guess it was in December. And then, I left to Virginia to go. And towards the end of the National Academy, we started having just 1-hour phone call meetings, and we would just talk. And I really appreciated Chief Dye because I'm 1,000 miles away, and he's asking me about input on organizational structure, strengths and weaknesses of the department. Just kind of looking for some honest feedback. And and I gave it to him. I really felt that, organizationally that, we could have maybe changed our structure and be a little bit more efficient. And then I come back in March, and about a month later, he calls me into his office and says, you know what, I've been thinking about this for a while. And, that's the one thing I've learned from Chief Dye is like, he's always thinking 4 or 5 steps ahead. I mean, this guy's always got the future goals now. What do we need to keep doing?
The wheels are always turning.
Yes, never be stagnant. I've learned that is that once we say, hey, we're in a good place, we don't need to do anything, we're going to be behind. And he told me that he planned on reorganizing, doing a restructure, and that he was going to promote me to deputy chief. And I had no idea, and he told me, and then we had to wait a couple months before we made it official because there were a few other things that we had to get worked out. And but yeah, it was a complete surprise. It was I never expected it. It was kind of a shock and fear too. Because anytime this person you really don't know says, hey, guess what, I'm going to make you part of this pivotal role in my executive team, and I've got plans and I need your help to make these come true. I was nervous. I called Kendra and told her, and I was like, I really don't know what to think. I'm excited, but I'm scared, because the last thing you want to do is let down anybody and let down the organization. So, but it's been great. It's been a great experience.
Yeah. You've done an exceptional job.
Well, thank you.
from what we hear, because we're at ground level, we hear everybody around the station, and I feel like our officers are, like, with our command staff we have in place, like, they couldn't be happier.
Awesome.
It's been all positive changes, and like you said, nobody really likes change,
mm-hmm.
and so you might get a few of those at first that kind of push back, but then once they realize, hey, this change is to benefit you, to make things better in our department.
Yeah, we've had some really good chiefs in our department. We did a lot of things really, really good, and Chief Dye, bringing an outside perspective, he's really helped us fine tune and find areas where we can be better, which has been good because our citizens deserve that. They deserve the best police department possible, and I think he's got us in the right trajectory to get there. And you mentioned culture. It's like we have a positive culture that focuses on wellness and in us being the best for ourselves, for our families, for our citizens. So, I mean, I think we have our priorities lined out where they're supposed to be, and it's helping us all be more productive. So we're in a really good place. We haven't reached the finish line, but we've got a plan to get there.
As a assistant chief, what does your day-to-day look like?
It's funny. When I signed on to be a police officer, right, all I wanted to do was, be a motor officer or K9. I never thought about being a chief, and as I've promoted, I've had the ability. I think one of the most gratifying things is helping others in the organization. And I think, to put it in a nutshell, my job is to get all of our staff the tools they need to be the best they can be. And that may be meeting with other department heads or assistant directors or finance to, try to find funding for tools and equipment, or, like our Fit Force program, really committing to that and, promoting the culture that we want. I don't get to do a lot of police work anymore, but the work I'm doing is very gratifying because I see other people happy and successful. Yeah. So, to get back to what my day looks like, lots of meetings, and then, lots of emails, and then the task to follow up. I mean, it could be anything from policy revision to talking to our legal advisors to, unfortunately I get a lot of complaints too. There's a lot of citizens that, they want to talk directly to the chief. So I'll take those calls because he's so busy and try to help them with their concerns. And if, definitely if it's something that we did wrong and we didn't deliver the level of service we should have, get that fixed. Or, it's, the chief talks about we're problem solvers, dedicated to the quality, improving the quality of life for our citizens. So finding out how I can solve problems. Yeah.
And you're even over the new build also, right?
Yes,
of our new PD.
I am. So I have been tasked as our PD project manager. So that, stay busy with that too.
You're learning a lot about construction.
Yes, more than I ever thought. It was kind of funny. We had a committee get together to talk about like the interior, like what do we want the inside of the building to look like. And personally, my wife does all that, right? She says, hang this mirror here, put this picture here. I like this paint color, paint it. So it's real easy. But having to be part of that process, it was exhausting. Imagine.
This morning we were learning about post-tension cables while we were over there.
Yeah. So, but we've got a great team in place, and I can't say thank you enough to those guys over there in engineering.
Yeah, we're excited.
Yeah.
We'll be here before we know it.
Yeah, we're still on fast. It is. So, if you haven't been by, it's right there at the corner of Century and Butler. They've got steel going up, and they've poured most of the concrete. There's still a couple big pours they have, but we're on track. We're on budget, which is the big, big plus. Huge. I probably should knock on some wood because, I don't want to jinx myself. But right now we're at a good spot.
Yeah, we need a mild winter so they can keep working.
Absolutely.
Yep.
I love it. It's exciting. So yeah, when I hired in here in 2007, you were an officer in the schools. And clearly different career paths for the two of us. But now that, as you've promoted along the way, has that been a big adjustment as far as because you're a very hands-on person?
It has. I and that was one of the hardest lessons to learn as a new supervisor, because if you jump in and do everything, you're not giving your people an opportunity to learn for themselves. And, one of the very first lessons I learned in the very first supervisor's class I ever went to is it's your job to find your replacement. you know? So as a corporal, I needed to be looking for officers that had those skills and those traits that would make good supervisors. Well, if you do everything on your own, you know, you can't find out what people have the ability to do. So it's definitely a learning curve, right? And personally, I struggle asking people to help because I don't want to feel like I'm giving them my work. And but you got to find that balance, and that's probably been one of the most difficult things, is stepping back a little bit each time as I've promoted up. And but again, you know, we have great people. You know, I've been blessed to work with some supervisors that you know I trust without any concerns, and I know they can do the job, and just being a resource for them, I think that's the most important thing. And I've learned that, you know, it's in, but yeah, it's been good.
Well, you're a huge help to me and Alexis, you know, because we know Chief has he's an eye for detail, and we love to be able to come to you and let you watch something or bounce something off of you, because you can help us before we get it on his desk.
Oh, I appreciate it. Yeah. And I'm always there to help. You know, one of the things is, you know, identifying people that are talented. And we have a lot of talented people in our department. And just giving them, you know, encouraging them and challenging them to use those talents. And, you know, it's, as I've promoted also, you know, as a young officer, you think that the only important thing in policing is out there writing tickets and putting people in jail. And as I've promoted, there's so much more. You know, I was guilty of giving community relations a hard time, you know, as a younger officer. But, you know, now I see the value, because the interactions that unit has with our community builds trust. It builds equity for us. And, you know, it's a hard job. I mean, I look at what Sergeant Peel's doing, like with our multifamily ordinance, and just
huge job.
The outreach that she's created. I mean, in you and Mike and Chance. I mean, so we have a connection with our community that I think a lot of places don't have. And I think that's why we have the support we have.
I have made a lot of friends here in Allen over the years. It's hard to go places and not know somebody that, you know, of course I always remember faces, don't always remember names, but you know, we make that impact being out in the community where they remember our names, like, because we've done something where it made an impact on them. Like, hey, Officer Ripolani, or
you know, like I have people just, you know, last night was National Night Out. You know, we had 25 registered parties, which since I've been here has been the most. I don't think we've, for the longest time, we were hovering around 15, maybe 16. And
this was a good year.
People were telling me you know, I was talking at one party and they were talking about John Felty and CPA. And I was like, wow, you're dating yourself. Cause I mean, Sergeant Felty has been retired for quite a few years now.
Yeah. 5 years, I think.
But you're exactly right. You made an impact, and people remember and made those memories and made that connection, and they're lifelong. And it's helping us today, because if there was ever a questionable incident, we know that our community is going to know that we were doing the right thing, and they've got our back. So that investment and that time it's paying off.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I wanted to settle a debate.
Sure.
So the first time I ever met you, I had just started here, and I attended a staff meeting with, at the time it was Sergeant Frank Page. And he wanted to debate you on how to pronounce your last name. And he was in there in front of the chief and everyone debating you that your last name was Taliaferro. Is it Taliaferro or is it Taliafer?
It's Taliafer. So the O's silent. So I'll give you a brief history, and it's probably too much. But originally, you know, my family was from Italy. So if you look at Ferro, it stands for iron. So the name's it's iron worker, works with iron. And then they migrated to England, and then over to Virginia, and then south through Georgia. But my dad's from Oklahoma, so I tell everybody all the Italian's gone. So you know, it's not fancy anymore. So
country now.
It's pretty country. Yes, pretty country.
So it's Taliafer.
It's Taliafer.
It's amazing that now Lieutenant Page felt the need to tell you how to pronounce
and it's
your
funny
last
because I've known people here for 20 years that still can't say it right. So it's just, you know, some people, it's just like,
I've always,
I accept it. It's, you know,
it took me up until probably, you know, now that I work closer with you to, I mean, I didn't know for sure. I was like, I'm not going to ask that question.
Well, the great
I'm not
thing
like
is
Frank. I'm
is
not
when the
gonna debate you.
telemarketers call, they botch it. So I know it's like, oh, I'm not interested.
Yeah.
So it's
Frank is not scared to ask any
he's
questions and
not.
debate you.
no.
Yeah, he's something else, that guy.
Oh my goodness.
And he's from Boston, so
He
he
is.
has no room to tell
Yeah.
anybody how to
You know,
say words.
Frank, he's another one of those. He came here from Boston. He's been a great officer. He's promoted to lieutenant. We spent a lot of time together on nights as I was his supervisor on a lot of shifts. But, Frank is one of those guys that, he really connects with people.
Mhm.
He does.
He's one of those people that he can change a room when he walks into it.
Mhm.
So, we're blessed to have him. He's a good guy.
Oh, we love him. He was our supervisor when she hired him, so he
Yes.
was our supervisor in community relations, and he was a natural at it. He was really good at that spot, and he decided to promote and go work nights.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like,
But
what
he's
were you
great at it.
thinking?
He's
So-
good at patrol.
He
I mean,
is.
everybody loves him on his shift. He has. I mean,
we're gonna get him on here eventually.
Oh, good.
So
He'll
we
be
talk
interesting
about
if you can understand
fajitas.
him.
Yeah,
We can't get the Boston out of him.
No, and
No.
it's even worse when he goes home to visit.
Yeah.
We have to get him reacclimated
yeah,
to
it takes
Texas
a couple weeks.
Yes.
all over again. It's terrible.
Yeah.
So, if there's one thing you could tell the community, what would that be?
I think through my career, my goal has never been to embarrass my family. All the decisions I've ever made, I wanted my family to be proud of me. I've based all my decisions off my belief, in Christ and my Catholic beliefs, and I want to make my family proud.
Mhm.
It's like this job can be consuming, and I think sometimes a lot of us we lose the fact and I just identify ourselves as police officers, and I want to be identified as a great husband, a great father, a great Christian, and then police officer.
Mhm.
That's part of me, but it's not who I am.
Mhm.
So I think the values that I hold deepest are rooted in the right place, and I think that's helped me through my career with, I hate to say success, because a lot of my success has been because I've been involved in teams that have been successful. I've
Mhm.
always tried to, like as we were talking earlier, find the talented people and encourage them to do their best. Because as a supervisor, if all your people are doing great, it makes you look great. It makes your job look easy. So, I just wanted to encourage them to be their best. But yeah, just those deep rooted values. And, I've never done anything to fray those or make me question those. And, sometimes I guess you can come across as boring, but it's really about, doing the right thing, doing what's ethical. Cause I take a lot of pride in what I do, the badge and the patch, it means a lot to me. And, not only do I not want to disgrace my family or embarrass them, I don't want to embarrass the other 155 or 220 of us that work for the Allen Police Department or
Mhm.
the 1,000 of us that work for the city. It's important to me. So I take that, and that's really important to me.
Is there anything new in your unit that you can share?
Our unit, I mean, if we don't want to get too technical, we're transitioning all of our in-car cameras that we use to record our traffic stops and our encounters. There's some new technology now that they have license plate reader capabilities.
Mhm.
So now we have the opportunity to collect more open source data that we can use as investigative tools or develop possible suspect leads.
Mhm.
We've it's really interesting. We're getting a lot of vendors coming in trying to get us to get involved with AI technologies.
Mhm.
There's a lot. This seems to be the new wave in law enforcement, just like everything else. Is that utilizing AI to manipulate your data, search your data, help us be more efficient. So we're trying a company right now that has been very generous and is letting us try their product for free for a little bit. And the great thing about Chief Dye is if we get some kind of new technology, the first people it goes to are our boots on the ground, our men and women that are working the streets. And if it's a technology that can benefit them, then we're going to really look into it. If it's a technology that they don't really need, then or they don't really like, then we're going to toss it because we don't want to waste our time with that. So I think just evolving and using the new technology coming to us.
Yeah, AI is the way of the world.
Yeah.
It seems like.
I think it's getting incorporated into just about
It's kinda
everything.
scary.
Yeah.
It's very interesting what you're seeing now that's being produced through AI.
Yeah, we go to a lot of PIO schools and training, and some of the videos, they're like, all right, is this a real video or a fake video? And it's really hard to tell the difference between an AI video and the real.
And some of the aspects we're looking at is performance metrics, data analysis. I mean, because if our investigators, if they get the very limited suspect information, or a vehicle, and it's like a white Ford license plate XYZ, well, they type it into AI, and then anything that we've dealt with utilizing those signatures or those descriptions, it'll pull for us. So rather than our staff having to comb through thousands and thousands of reports, it spits it out for them, right then and there, and then they can, so something that could have taken weeks to search now takes seconds. So
wow,
that's really cool. Well, we appreciate you coming on today. We're not going to take up too much of your time. I know you're a busy man. So we really do thank you for coming on. Sorry we waited.
No, you're good.
A few episodes to get you on here.
That's part of my job, is giving people hard times too. So
yeah, we appreciate it. We love it.
Yes, thank you so much. We appreciate it.
If you want to learn more about upcoming events or what we do here at the Allen Police Department, go to allenpolice.org.
And make sure to like and subscribe. And if you have any comments, leave them down below.
We'll see you next time.